welcome to the Light Side Podcast. My name is Shola. I'm your host. I'm so happy to have another conversation with you. Thank you for tuning in. Let's get right into it. If you've been here, I talk about Eckhart Tolle, and he has a book called The Power of Now and another called A New Earth. I have mentioned it so many times throughout the episodes I've created, and I bought both books at the same time about 11 years ago in 2013. I remember trying to read it and it just wasn't sticking. It was really hard to get into, and I think I was just not there yet. And that's the beauty of being on a spiritual growth, personal growth journey, is that it's one step at a time, and you just have to take the steps that are fitting and resonating with you at the time and the place where you are right now, because it's always evolving. You can only do what's in front of you right now, and then the next step will appear and the next step appear. Whether a book is resonating or not, these are all signs, and being in tune with our intuition to listen to those nudges. I got this book so long ago, and I actually didn't read it until 2022. And it was such a big mindset shift. It was so interesting. When I was working with a therapist, I was dealing with a lot of insomnia, and I was taking different medications, and I wanted to get off of them. And ultimately, one day mentioned, I really recommend reading The Power of Now. It will really help on your journey. And I said, I'm actually reading it right now. And I just thought it was such a God wink, how synchronistic that he mentioned for me to read that too. But the gist of the book, The Power of Now, is that it is emphasizing being present in the here and now. And all that we have is right now. Avoid the pain that we instill in our lives by being consumed in the past with regrets or worrying about the future with different anxieties. And I loved how he had written The New Earth a decade ago, and now you can see how it feels like this great awakening is happening. There's a lot more people becoming aware, caring more about their happiness over their accomplishments, caring about how they feel and how they interact with people and what their purpose and mission is in life. And the book really dives into it. We have the ego and the mind, and the ego is this voice in our head that creates an identity for us based on our thoughts and emotions, and how we have our true self. And the true self is who we are inspiring to be more connected to be more in tune with. Whereas the ego mind is what tends to get in our way. Is what instills fear in us. It's conditioned us. Basically, there is the self, or true self, and the not self. And that most people are controlled by their mind and are ultimately on autopilot. Who we are at our core, our soul, our beingness, our consciousness is different than the mind that is constantly chattering. Like, it is basically on autopilot. When you become aware of the fact that you are separate from your mind that is incessantly going off, then you can begin to disassociate from it and disidentify from it. And by doing so, you insert this level of consciousness, because then you become the observer, is the way he puts it in the book, that who you are, who you truly are, your soul that is eternal, I'm putting it in my own words, is the consciousness that he refers to as the beingness, which he refers to as the consciousness, which is the light of all creation. It's like you are essentially connected to all of creation through your consciousness. But because so many people are on autopilot and are numb to the truth of their being, because their mind has taken over, there is no gap between them and the mind. They have identified with the mind. And because the mind is the ego, is fear-based, at an ego level, there is separation between you and your neighbor. At a soul level, there's oneness. By identifying the ego, we always have a choice, and it's the power of choice that enables us to choose right here, right now. He talks about how the ego mind is essentially what tends to challenge us with fears of the future, with anxieties and past regrets, overthinking, oh, I should have done that, I should have done this, if I didn't do that. And he really talks about how being present can reduce the stress and increase the joy and fulfillment that we experience in our lives. What I've mentioned in many episodes is the pain body. The pain body is accumulated emotional pain that can become a separate entity within us, feeding on negative emotions. And he talks about how the pain body, same with the ego mind, wants to be in control. It wants to continue to feed off of negativity, off of pain. And the pain body tries to live on and exist through suffering, through negative emotions. I think there's ways where we can recognize and disidentify from the pain body to reduce what he calls suffering. The pain body, like recognizing that within you is a pain body of conditioning. I think of this, growing up, like your first memories, like your first experiences, like at school, maybe you had siblings who you compared yourself to. Maybe you have a people-pleasing tendency or whatever it might be. These are conditionings that we have acquired over our lifetime through our life experience, just being a human being, right? At the onset, we're these pure souls. We see kids just have fun and they're so in the moment. Kids are the perfect example of living in the now. They're super engaged. They're not distracted. They're not worrying about what ifs. They're not worrying about what's going to happen. They're not anxious about outcomes and circumstances and situations that may hurt them. They're just with right here, right now. And the thing is, our mind is very capable of solving problems right here, right now. It's the ego, it's the pain body that is trying to reinforce a certain conditioning. Your mind tends to look for evidence of what it knows because it gives it a sense of comfort, a sense of reassurance. And this is why a lot of people seek like familiar discomfort over experiences that can actually suit us and serve us. And so seeing the pain body and understanding that emotional pain can be the reason why we're experiencing similar patterns, having the awareness. The book is really about establishing awareness that within you are these complexities that are making you who you are and how you behave. And by being aware of it, you can then navigate it and reduce the pain that you experience and reduce the suffering and come back to the present moment, come back to the here and now and enjoy life for what it's meant to be, because your mind, your ego is making it more complicated. Whereas you don't really need to prep so much for what's to come outside of having an idea of, let's say, what you want to do. Having a schedule, planning is important. But worrying is different than planning, right? Worrying and living far ahead is different than briefly planning and then coming back to the now moment. Living in the past with regret is destructive on our self-worth, on our self-confidence, on our self-esteem. And so realizing that by being in the past instead of right here, right now, we're hurting ourselves. To explain this idea of past and present, I'm going to read a part of the book. It's page 50. It says, when you think about the future, you do it now. Past and future obviously have no reality of their own. Just as the moon has no light of its own, but can only reflect the light of the sun, so are past and future only pale reflections of the light, power, and reality of the eternal present. Their reality is borrowed from the now. I think that is just so powerful. And he says it's hard to grasp this by the mind. It's important to grasp it from your consciousness, from your being, from your essence, and shift from mind to being, from time to presence. And suddenly, when you do that, everything feels more alive. This is like the whole part of spiritual awakening, right? When people have their spiritual awakening, they become more attuned to the beauty around them. They see more beauty in the simple things. They see beauty in the shades of green in a tree. They see beauty in the colors of the sky and clouds, even if it's not blue. They see beauty in the small things in life, in the little things in life, to the big things, of course. But it's about being aware to notice the beauty. And being aware requires us to be able to silence that inner voice or quiet it, make it less, so that through the inner silence and stillness, we can experience the present moment more fully. And so this is where meditation becomes so helpful. So mindful breathing, practicing meditation, breathing can really help you quiet the noise and enjoy the present. And it's all about practice. Some days it's a lot easier than others. Some days it's impossible. And you hear that from expert meditators where they even will take hours to get there. Our minds are busy and it takes time to quiet it. And when we resist thoughts, they persist. Allow thoughts to come and go like clouds, like leaves. They just come and go. Returning to your breath will allow you to center and create that stillness and silence that will help you get in tune with your higher self, get in tune with your true self, and receive nudges, hear the wisdom you need to hear, feel pulled towards actions you need to take. And from there, you can enjoy the present moment and not live in the past or future because you're learning to not resist the thoughts. You're allowing them to come and go, but you're not fixating on it. And I think that's the main difference, is not fixating on the thought. The other thing he said, close your eyes and say to yourself, I wonder what my next thought is going to be. Then become alert and wait for the next thought. And it's beautiful practicing presence and meditation. If you close your eyes and ask yourself that, do that whenever you get a chance, pause at the end of the episode and become alert and aware and wait for the next thought. Become like a cat watching a mouse hole. You realize that, wait, I'm quiet for some time because I'm waiting for a thought. Then that's exactly when you realize there's a separation with you and your thought and your mind. You are not your mind. And I think that is one of the most beautiful parts of this book. He talks a lot about improving your life situation by being present instead of waiting for the next moment, the next point in time. He ultimately talks about how through meditation, you're able to create this inner silence and you're able to improve your ability to meditate. It is not only helpful for your mental health to have space and clarity, not only do you get connected with your higher self, it is super energizing. And just like anything else, it takes practice, but the benefits are so much in that you're able to add mindfulness into your interactions. You're able to react more mindfully when people say something. You're less likely to be triggered. You may be triggered, and the second time and the third time you'll respond better. And it allows you to pause before your response. It allows you to better manage your relationships. I cannot recommend it enough, and it's extremely life-changing to start meditating. I also want to share a piece about the ego because I think he puts it so beautifully. He says how the egoic mind is running your life, and you cannot truly be at ease until you essentially are able to free yourself from the thoughts that come into your mind and basically cloud everything else. He talks about the most common ego identifications have to do with possessions. The work you do, social status and recognition, knowledge and education, physical appearance, special abilities, relationships, personal and family history, belief systems, and also political, nationalistic, racial, religious, and other collective identifications. None of these is you. And that is so powerful. And that's also a lot of the main premises that we allude to on this podcast is the notion that your happiness, your fulfillment is all within you. It's all about finding the light within you, your source of motivation and inspiration from within you, outside of the validation, outside of the external accomplishments and things. I think that is what we're seeing in the Great Awakening that's happening, as I like to call it, because that's why people are more and more becoming solopreneurs or working on initiatives or projects that is about helping others, right? And helping humanity. I love how he says, don't seek yourself in the mind. That identification with the mind creates a false self, the ego, as a substitute for your true self rooted in being, i.e. consciousness, i.e. your higher self, i.e. your soul, your being. You become as a branch cut off from the vine, as Jesus puts it. End quote. That's page 47 of the book. There's so many beautiful quotes and sections of this, and I want to share more with you. The pain body is a dark shadow cast by the ego, is actually afraid of the light of your consciousness. It is afraid of being found out. Its survival depends on your unconscious identification with it, as well as on your unconscious fear of facing the pain that lives in you. But if you don't face it, if you don't bring the light of your consciousness into the pain, you will be forced to relive it again and again. Like the pain body wants more pain. It goes to show though that the tendency for us to run from pain, the tendency for us to numb pain through drinking or whatever form of substances that we prefer, is just we're basically trying to numb the pain, which actually gets us further away from our consciousness. Instead of getting us closer, we get closer to the ego and the pain as opposed to away from it. But it's a way of becoming so unconscious that it's like the unconscious wants more unconsciousness and the conscious wants to help, but the unconscious is just pushing the conscious away, whereas the only thing that can help that is the conscious. The moment you observe your pain body directly and see it for what it is, feel its energy filled within you, and take your attention into it, the identification is broken. Because now you know that there is a you, and then there is a pain body, and there is your mind, and you are disassociating yourself, your inner being, your beingness, your soul from the ego that tends to make certain decisions for you, from the ego that tends to make decisions from the self, the false self, as he mentions. And so what he says is a higher dimension of consciousness is then able to enter when you're able to observe it directly, and he calls that presence. You are now the witness or the watcher of the pain body. This means it cannot use you anymore by pretending to be you, and it can no longer replenish itself through you. You have found your innermost strength. You have accessed the power of now. I love this so much. He talks about how unconsciousness creates the pain, consciousness transmutes it into itself. It's so beautiful. St. Paul expressed this universal principle beautifully. Everything is shown up by being exposed to the light, and whatever exposed to the light itself becomes light. Watching it implies accepting it as part of what is at that moment. It's that whole notion of what you resist persists. I just said that on a different conversation, but by just being aware of it, by acknowledging it, you're accepting it and you're transmuting it and you're separating it from yourself. Being the observer of your pain, being the observer of your anger, being the observer of the thoughts that aren't serving you, and having this belief that you have the power to change your life through changing your mind. Again, there's so many spiritual books on this topic because it's the secret. It's the path to living with more joy, to learning how to silence your mind so that it doesn't control you. And by silence, I mean silence the negativity in your mind, the pain in your mind. And that's the work we do together. I'm super passionate about this because I have experienced it change my life. It's a path of avoiding taking so many pills in order to go to sleep. Dealing with a lot of anxiety, taking medicine is only going to add more side effects for you to deal with, and then doctors are going to prescribe you more medicine for the side effects. That's what I've seen in people I know. That's what I saw myself directly when I took insomnia medications when I was having a really tough time. The medicine they were giving me was having such major side effects. I fell a few times, and then they were trying to give me other medicine for it, and I was like, that's it. That's enough. I'm not doing this. I'm not taking medicine. I want to naturally sleep. And that's when I did a lot of work, and a lot of the work entailed of releasing the pain body, releasing the pain and noticing what the pain body is through the triggers. So your triggers are your signs. When your pain body is being triggered basically and taking the steering wheel, it becomes the driver. And when you see the pain, the ego will fight you. The ego does not want to disassociate from the pain because it is how it thrives. It's how it lives. And so when you learn to disassociate yourself, then everything changes, truly. Because then you learn how to face your feelings, you learn how to allow them to pass. You learn how to sit with pain, and you realize that it can really move a lot faster if you allow yourself to cry, if you allow yourself to release, if you allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. It's momentarily, and then you can live in the joy. And the other thing I want to mention is when we get the courage to live with the knowing that we have a pain body, that we're going to keep having to unpack, keep shedding the layers, and that we are able to use it for our growth, for our evolution. I believe in the book, he said the greatest obstacle to enlightenment is our ego, and the pain that we feel continue to build up. And I think most people, because they aren't facing their pain, aren't accepting their pain, aren't allowing their pain to flow, they are suppressing it. And by suppressing it, they're actually resisting it. And by resisting it, they're allowing it to build up. He shares some methods in terms of dealing or reducing suffering with the pain body. And he says that's through our attention with it, our consciousness. And he says, focus attention on the feeling inside you. Know that it is the pain body. It is not who you are. It's what you're experiencing. And accept that it's there. Don't think about it. Don't let the feeling turn into thinking. Don't judge yourself or analyze yourself or just start labeling yourself. Don't make an identity for yourself out of it, but stay present and continue to be the observer of what is happening inside you. And I love this about the book so much because he really hones in on the fact that you, the human version of you here on earth, meaning this human essence and personality that you have created, is separate from your soul, which is eternal, which is nowness. It's eternal existence. It's eternal beingness, is I believe how he put it. He's telling us, don't judge or analyze yourself. Don't make what you're feeling and what you're experiencing or how you are feeling or experiencing life right now your identity. Don't make it an identity for yourself out of it. Stay present and continue to be the observer of what is happening inside you. He's saying, allow your soul, allow your inner being, your higher self, to be the observer of what you're experiencing. Become aware not of only the emotional pain, but the one who observes, the silent watcher. It says, this is the power of the now, the power of your own conscious presence. Then see what happens. Juicy, juicy, juicy. I love this. And whenever you see people engaging in arguments, all of us are human, we engage in arguments. Through meditation, through awareness, you will become better at this over time. It's pausing and asking, like, am I engaging in this conversation out of ego because my ego has the need to feel right, has the need to feel like I am winning, or that I need to come above, or that this is some sort of competition? Or am I engaging in this to understand this person? Am I engaging to learn? Am I engaging to become better, to help them? I think just getting in touch with your intention over and over again. What is my intention in engaging in this conversation? Am I arguing for the sake of proving somebody wrong? What are my intentions in this case? Am I really seeking connection? Am I seeking to be seen? Am I seeking to be understood? And there's just so much. I wanted to share the bits of it that are most important, which he really talks about surrendering, which is the notion of acceptance. To surrender is to accept things as they are. Let me give you some examples. He essentially describes surrendering as not just accepting something. He says, it's not like I'm saying if you're stuck in the mud, just surrender and resign and be stuck in the mud. He's saying that by surrendering, I'm saying to dismiss any judgment of what is, and dismiss basically through doing that, there's no resistance, there's no emotional negativity, there's no emotional reaction in the situation. You just accept the isness of this moment. Then you're able to take action. So in the scenario of the mud, he's not saying you don't want to be stuck in the mud. You just recognize fully that you want to get out of the mud. And then you are able to then narrow your attention down to the present moment without mentally labeling it in any way. So you're removing the judgment out of it. I'm so dumb. I got stuck in the mud. Oh, I'm so dumb. I stepped into it. And then you feel bad or shameful for your behavior. He's saying instead of that, you accept the isness of the moment, and then you can take action and do all that you can to get out of the mud. And that is positive action. It's far more effective than negative action, which arises out of anger, despair, or frustration. Until you achieve the desired result, you continue to practice surrender by refraining from labeling the now. When I think about it, if you're in traffic, for instance, you can say, okay, I'm in traffic. Being angry about traffic and making it feel like it's 50 or an hour. Oh, if I had left earlier, if that person didn't talk to me, if that person didn't do blah, blah, blah. Just making it up. If you're able to refrain from that and stop yourself and say, okay, I'm stuck in traffic, then an idea comes. Oh, it's a great time to call mom. Oh, it's a great time to listen to this podcast. Before you know it, the 20 minutes feels like it was 5 or 10. Or traffic clears up. You never know, right? But when you are fixating on the fact that you're stuck in traffic, it just feels so much worse and it impacts your mood. It poisons your mood, really. And then the people you interact with once you get home may also feel that. You may get in an argument. I don't know. It just becomes a snowball effect. And it's the same thing with other situations as well, right? Just accepting it. Okay, now what? Instead of blame, instead of self-shame, instead of what ifs, instead of I should have done that, I could have done that, instead of basically turning it on to yourself, instead of activating your pain body, as Eckhart Tolle puts it, you're able to solutionize, you're able to instill the power of now and engage with what is and make the best of it. Like with problem solving, I've made this example in the past. Truly, the power of now is the power of your presence, is the power of your consciousness, is the power of shedding the light. Is one of the best effects you get from a coaching relationship. Their ability is to shine light, is to shine the spotlight on things that you may not see, is to help you raise your consciousness and become aware of the pain body that is keeping you stuck in suffering. And that's my approach to coaching. I have a very holistic approach, and I love what I do because I've seen so much transformation through it. And I think it's learning how to transform our suffering into peace. And by that, it's not misinterpreting it to think that by cutting off myself from my feelings, I'm surrendering. It's very important to feel your feelings. It's very important to have a relationship with yourself, to have a self-reflection and introspection relationship so that you can be in touch. Self-awareness is absolutely everything. It's always the first step. In any how-to podcast that I've done, if you are able to get into a state of acceptance, of isness, if you abide in the state of acceptance, this is page 221, you create no more negativity, no more suffering, no more unhappiness, because it's not like you have some sort of expectation of how things need to go. You just accept things for what they are. And the light of your consciousness, the presence, the power of now is able to insert itself and help you get to a better place, a better state. And typically, because if you have activated the light of your consciousness, which is connected to all of creation, and you have activated the power of now, you are more likely to be living with peace and joy and in good vibrations and experiencing good positive experiences in your life. And so you're less likely to be in a place that is deeply frustrating. But given we're on a human journey, frustrations are normal. But it's about being okay with it. The biggest flex is being unbothered. The biggest flex is being okay as is, whether something happens one way or another. Being rooted in yourself, in your consciousness, in your presence, in your acceptance, in your beingness, in your power. You then live in a state of non-resistance, a state of grace and lightness, free of struggle. And I think this is exactly why he calls the book a guide to spiritual enlightenment, because truly having a relationship with your higher self and being conscious and instilling the power of right now into every one of your moments is adding light to the fog, as he gives an example of. He says, think about as if you're walking in a dark night and it's foggy and you have a flashlight. The flashlight is your consciousness, is your power of now into the fog of your life, because it can be unclear. He talks about if an unconscious resistance pattern is arising because the condition is so extreme and so absolutely unacceptable to you, then you're creating some form of pain, some form of suffering. It may look as if the situation is creating the suffering, but ultimately this is not your resistance is. Your inability to accept it is essentially what causes suffering. Now, here's your second chance at surrender. If you cannot accept what is outside, then accept what is inside. If you cannot accept the external condition, accept the internal condition. This means do not resist the pain. Allow it to be there. Surrender to the grief, despair, fear, loneliness, or whatever form of suffering it takes. Witnessing it without labeling it, mentally embrace it, then see how the miracle of surrender transmutes deep suffering into deep peace. This is your crucifixion. Let it become your resurrection and ascension. Wow. I love how he adds, when your pain is deep, all talk of suffering will probably seem futile and meaningless anyway. When your pain is deep, you will likely have a strong urge to escape from it rather than to surrender it. You don't want to feel what you feel. What could be more normal? But there is no escape, no way out. And this is exactly what we were talking about earlier. This is when we escape to work, to drink, to take drugs, anger, projection, suppression, so on. So you don't free yourself from the pain. You actually intensify it when you make it unconscious. And that's why I was like, actually puts it in such beautiful words. I was saying like your unconscious becomes more unconscious. It's like your pain gets more deep, it gets worse. And that's why most people go until they absolutely cannot take it anymore. And then that's when they become aware, this cannot be my life, right? And so suffering does not diminish in intensity when you make it unconscious. When you deny emotional pain, everything you do or think, as well as your relationships, become contaminated with it. You broadcast it, and the energy you give emanates it, and others will pick up on it just subliminally. If they are unconscious, they may even feel compelled to attack or hurt you in some way, or you may hurt them in an unconscious projection of your pain. You attract and manifest whatever corresponds to your inner state. I hadn't even highlighted this. My eyes just fell on it, and I'm so happy I read it because I haven't read this book in a few years. And wow, it's so beautiful. I talk about this a lot in my content. You attract and manifest whatever corresponds to your inner state. When there is no way out, there is still always a way through. So don't turn away from the pain. Face it, feel it fully. Feel it. Do not think about it. Express it if necessary, but don't create a script in your mind around it. Give all your attention to the feeling, not to the person, event, or situation that seems to have caused it. Don't let the mind use the pain to create a victim identity for yourself out of it. And also by turning yourself against those people, feeling sorry for yourself and telling yourself other stories will keep you stuck in suffering. Since it is impossible to get away from the feeling, the only possibility of change is to move into it. Otherwise, nothing will shift. I love this so much. I think this book is such a wonderful book to really, it just encapsulates a lot of the personal growth content that you may consume. And this is the power of having a soundboard, of having a coach, having someone trusted that's unbiased, that can hear your pain and help you transmute it. That is one of my strengths that I get as feedback, is that I'm able to help people transmute their pain. And I'm so thankful for the gift to be able to do that and to help people on their journey. I think it's hard to put our attention on the pain. It's hard to feel grief. It's hard to fear and dread and feel lonely and fear the loneliness and just exasperate it even more. It's really hard. But once you do it, you realize, hey, it actually passes a lot quicker than I thought. And you stop yourself from labeling it and you're just feeling it as you go into the feeling. For instance, I had to become okay with feeling alone. I had to accept that. I felt very alone for a period of my life. And I was like, okay, I think I just have to accept that I'm alone. And I may be alone for a prolonged period. And as soon as I accepted that, it's like it changed. It completely changed. Once I accepted that the pain that I am experiencing, that the loneliness I was experiencing may just be the case, it then transmuted. And so put your attention on it. And instead of labeling it, because it's a lot scarier to think about loneliness and how long you may be lonely versus just feeling the loneliness for however transitory period it may be. The whole book is building up reasons, philosophical and psychological, and provides a lot of verbiage from the Bible and other ancient texts talking about how important it is to stay alert, stay present, stay away from judgment, basically remain unbiased and present with yourself. And through being present with your whole being, You're instilling unconditional love, unconditional presence with every cell of your body, which allows you to infuse the power of now, which is the power of your higher self and the power of your consciousness, which is one with all of creation. And by doing so, you're bringing light into the darkness. And this is the flame of your consciousness. I love it so much. Honestly, this is a whole formula or a whole recipe, the whole medicine for surrendering. And allowing is giving your full attention to the power of now, which is the power of your presence. The book is really deep. It's very deep, and I highly recommend reading it and to getting the depth of it on your own, because you can really ruminate on the sentences and ponder the meaning of it and have aha moments and insights of your own. I just thought it was helpful to share the bits and pieces of the mind, the pain body, how he talks about that you are not your mind, and learning to disassociate with that and identifying the pain body and how you can identify. I feel like the book is really giving you a handbook on how to live with more peace and joy on a day-to-day basis. Because are you so busy getting to the future that the present is just reduced to a means of getting there? Basically, you're using all of your time to get somewhere else. And when we do that energetically, the laws of the universe say that we will continue to do that. And there is no arriving. There's no real arriving. And sometimes when you arrive, unless you're enjoying the process, when you arrive, a lot of times people are disappointed because the arrival is not some big bang. Basically, the whole process took way longer than the arrival. And so if you're enjoying the process deeply, then you enjoy the arrival as well, because it's just an extension of the process. Like, I loved every minute of that. Like, I loved every minute of this, and now I'm here. I'm so happy I made it. There's just so many golden nuggets, and I don't want to make this into an audible because there is a lot to cover, but I think I covered the highlights, the big points, the conscious mind, the unconscious, our pain body, our ability to surrender and infuse the power of now, the power of consciousness, the power of beingness into this moment. I hope you found it helpful. Let me know your thoughts. As always, if you enjoyed this podcast, please rate, review, share. It helps so much. It costs absolutely nothing to rate the podcast. It means so much to me and helps the podcast to be found by other listeners. Sending you so much love. Until next time.